From KGW News, this is Straight Talk with Laurel Porter.
Hello and welcome to Straight Talk. I'm Laurel Porter. A lot has been said about the results of the November election and Donald Trump and the Republicans' sweeping wins. Not only did Trump win the White House, but Republicans took majority control of the Senate, and they will hold on to a thin majority in the House. But there is one Democrat from our region who is getting a lot of attention for her win in a red-leaning district, Southwest Washington Congresswoman Marie Gluesenkamp Perez. She's one of only 3 Democratic representatives to win a rural district won by Donald Trump. And she was ranked as the #1 most vulnerable Democrat in the House. But she won in a pitched campaign battle with Republican former Green Beret Joe Kent. It was a rematch from 2022 in a race she won by fewer than 3,000 votes. Some dismissed her win then as a fluke. This time she expanded that victory margin to more than 16,000. And the Democratic Party and the national press have taken notice. Her accomplishment has been featured in the New York Times and the LA Times. She's appeared on CNN in a lengthy interview with Jake Tapper, on Pod Save America and Vox Today Explained. They all want to know her secret to success, the message she has for Democrats, and her view on the way forward for the Democratic Party. Here to share her thoughts with us, I'm pleased to welcome back to Straight Talk Southwest Washington's 3rd District Congresswoman Marie Gluesenkamp Perez. Thank you for being here. I know it's a really busy time.
Thank you. I'm very glad to be here.
And congratulations. I mean, how does it feel? It was a hard-fought campaign.
It was I think we're all very happy to not see the ads on TV anymore. But it's an incredible honor. I mean, it's a gift to get to keep doing the work and representing my community, and so it's just a huge honor and a responsibility I take really seriously.
Were you confident that you would be reelected?
I did not take anything for granted in this. You know, I think one of the primary mistakes people make is like entitlement, you know, and you know, being a small business owner, we own an auto repair shop, like, you know, you don't take anything for granted. Like, it's a grind, and you just, every day is a gift. And so just staying focused and working hard with the time that I had, and so here we go again. It's exciting.
I think about how far you've come. I think about the primary 2022, and you were here on Straight Talk, and I think you told me at the time it was your first time in a television interview, and you had one staffer who was doing social media. You weren't getting any real support from the National Democratic Party, yet you won, and then you've won again, and now you're getting all this attention. I mean, it's a meteoric rise. Does it feel surreal to you sometimes?
This was not on my bingo card at all. But you know, I am really proud of where I'm from. I know where my friends are. Like, I know what my job is, and a lot of this is just it's just sort of noise. You know, it's a gift to get to stay doing this work, and you know, we don't actually like have a TV at home. You know, so a lot of it is just something that sort of feels like it's a little bit of another world. And, you know, I just stay focused on like what I hear at the grocery store, what I'm hearing at daycare drop off, like, you know, my constituents who are writing in, and just staying very relentlessly focused on being present and working hard. So, you know, I don't know that many people that like watch Jake Tapper, you know, and so it's a little bit of, it feels like a little bit of like a sort of parallel universe kind of thing.
Well, let's talk about how you did it. How do you think, what gave you the advantage? How did you end up connecting with enough voters to be reelected?
It was hugely encouraging to say, you know, some people gave me the benefit of the doubt in the last cycle, and to really go and say like, look, I'm okay with my party being mad at me. Like, I'm not listening to activists in the nearest big city. I'm here talking to people who are running small businesses, to local law enforcement, to our teachers, you know, people who are keeping the wheels on the bus. Like, that's who I'm listening to, and demonstrating that, you know, yeah, and it's reflected in my vote record. Top 3% most bipartisan voting members in the U.S. House of Representatives. And so to be able to say, I did what I said I was going to do, and I'm going to keep doing that. I know what my job is here, and it's to listen to people. It's really encouraging to say, in an increasingly nationally polarized environment, that when you show up and listen respectfully and with curiosity, you can build a coalition, you can build a team. We can drown out the noise of like clickbait politics and deliver things that really matter to us. So it's a gift, and you know, I think a lot of the conversation around me being like a fluke, or you know, the kind of political establishment that said like, look, she doesn't really have prior elected experience, she doesn't have wealth to lean on, she doesn't have, you know, a name recognition broadly, to say like, actually, I think a lot of Americans do want to see more small business owners. They do want to see people with kids in daycare. They do want to see their lived experience at the legislative table, and our priorities being treated with urgency, not something from a think tank or somewhere else, but like, we don't need somebody else to talk for us.
So you think there should be more candidates like you?
We have to change who we're running. We have to change who is considered qualified and who's getting support. And it's vitally important. Like, I just don't think that we need more lawyers in Washington, D.C. I think there are fewer than 5 people in Congress who have a child in daycare. And that's why we don't see urgency or an understanding of what the lived reality is in America today. So changing who we think is qualified, changing who we're supporting, that I think is the path forward, not a prescriptive set of talking points.
What would you say to people who are listening who, well, you were 34 years old when you ran, you'd only run for county commission and you'd lost that race, like you said, you didn't have really any political experience. What do you say to someone who says, I could never do that, it seems impossible?
You have to do it. Like, politics is what got us here, it's not what's gonna fix us. Like, we need people who have young families, who are struggling to keep their family business running. Those are exactly who we need running. And so, you know, I'm not here to say like, oh, take these like one weird trick to like change the party or change the country. It is about a sort of almost a deindustrialization, like a return to local agency and local priorities. That is the path forward, I believe.
Well, after the election, Senator Bernie Sanders, who I think you have supported in the past, said the Democratic Party, once known as the party of the working class, has abandoned the working class. And not surprisingly, he said, the working class has abandoned the Democratic Party. Do you agree with that?
I don't see a real understanding or respect for working people in the political system today. I also don't think there's an appetite. Like, I don't think people just see the solution as more free stuff from the government. Like, I don't think that's the point here. I think what we want is to be able to run a family business without a team of lawyers or tax consultants. Like, we don't want, you know, some like mandate about whatever hiring practices at Fortune 500. That's not the path forward. Like, we need to expand the idea of equity to not say like, oh, we translated this hiring form into 8 different languages, so we're done it. Congratulations, boys. Like, no, you haven't done it. If you still need a lawyer to do the paperwork for you, you have not made an equitable system. Like, you need to be able to run a business with an 8th grade reading level in this country.
Well, if you were to imagine a Democratic candidate that could run in 4 years, in 2028, for president, what would that candidate be like? What campaign issues would they run on?
I haven't thought a whole lot about issues at a presidential level, but I do think that there is an appetite for a younger generation, maybe a veteran, something that a different set of experiences, not a traditionally credentialed person. Like, I don't think that the worldview that's generated by like an Ivy League existence is one that sees the issues that we're experiencing. That knows what it's like to try to get a building permit or, you know, pass an OSHA inspection. I think more of a return to sort of the nuts and bolts of good governance. You know, I don't think we want to like try to fix things by having more tax credits for a certain thing. Like, we want to have more competition. We want a level playing field for small businesses. So, you know, candidates like that, I don't think we know who that person is right now, but I know that there are people who voted for me and who voted for Donald Trump who would also vote for a different kind of Democrat.
Let me go back in time a little bit and talk about the current president. You were one of the first to suggest publicly that Joe Biden should step aside, and you gave us a statement back in July. It read in part, like most people in Southwest Washington, I doubt the president's judgment about his health. his fitness to do the job, and whether he's the one making important decisions about our country, rather than unelected advisors. Americans deserve to feel their president is fit enough to do the job. The crisis of confidence in the president's leadership needs to come to an end. The president should do what he knows is right for the country and put the national interests first. That was July 11th after the Biden-Trump debate. You not only suggested that he step aside, you were strongly suggesting that he resign. Is that what you wanted to see?
You know, sometimes in DC, like, I kind of feel like, am I the crazy one or is everybody else out of touch? And it's encouraging to me in some ways that, like, I was reading the room right, that, you know, what I was hearing from my friends and family, people at church, like, is basically the national sentiment. Concerns about the current fitness to serve as president persist. Concerns about age and acuity persist.
You have concerns today still?
Yes. I think, and, you know, I don't pay a lot of attention to polling, but I've seen national polling that's quite robust that says like 80% of Americans do also.
Well, here on Straight Talk and other places, you would not endorse Kamala Harris and you wouldn't say that you voted for her. Was that in a red-leaning district? Was that a strategy?
It was not a strategy from a campaign perspective. It is more of a philosophy that, like, I was not elected to be a political strategist. I am elected to represent the interest of my community. And all of this focus on sort of the national scale, you know, what's going on with the presidential race, I think misses the point. It's like trying to push with a rope. You know, we are saying that things are broken. More and more Americans feel like, you know, federal government is not functioning the way it needs to. And to make all of the conversation about national figures misses the point that we feel unheard, that our issues aren't being treated with urgency. And so, like, when we make it all about these sort of big ideas without representing the local perspective, the local manifestation of those ideas, we lose the power and the urgency of those specifics. Like, I did an RV tour, and I was around, you know, we had like more than 20 towns. People were not asking me about who I was voting for president. We were talking about Spirit Lake. We were talking about flooding in the Chehalis River Valley. You know, we were talking about, like, sea lions in the Columbia, the national debt, you know, and people were not asking me and my community about the presidential race.
You are the co-chair of the Blue Dog Coalition, and you've introduced legislation along with another member of your coalition, Representative Jared Golden of Maine, to create a bipartisan select committee on electoral reform. What would that do? Why do you think that's needed?
Well, you know, I think 90% of Americans agree about basically 90% of the issues. And it's the 10 things we disagree about that are kind of turned into a stake to drive into the middle of our community. And when we think about why that is, like, why are all of these seats safely red or safely blue and not in contest? And what does that mean for an ordinary American? Like, it means that person, when they get elected, they think they have a lifetime tenure and they don't have urgency to work every day diligently. And so I think we need to lay out all of the options that are available for creating a more representative, more responsive electoral system, whether that is, you know, proportional representation or...
And you've talked about expanding the House.
Yes.
How would that help?
Well, in 1910, I think was the last time that they expanded the House. And at that point, every member of Congress represented about 300,000 people. Today, I represent around 800,000. That's the average in the House. And so it makes it more difficult to gerrymander seats when they're smaller. But I'm not convinced that adding more electeds is going to solve the problem. So the point is not to have a prescriptive, like, here's absolutely what we should do, but to say, writ large, you know, the committee is split equally between Republicans and Democrats. Writ large, what is the best path forward to create a more representative, more responsive body? So laying out all the options, analyzing them, figuring out what we could build a coalition around to deliver a more representative, more responsive body.
Before we go to break, I did want to talk a little bit about foreign policy because Ukraine has been on the front burner for a long time, but it seems like the conflict between Ukraine and Russia has really ratcheted up with President Biden approving these American-supplied missiles that can reach deep into Russia, the ATACMS, and Putin is threatening back, even suggesting nuclear attack. What do you think should be happening? I mean, President-elect Trump has said that he would end the conflict in day one. How do you think this conflict ends? What do you want to see happen? I know you've been a big supporter of support for Ukraine.
That's right. Ukraine absolutely needs to be able to defend themselves, and it's in our national interest. I think when we think about long-term global security, a durable peace, a world order that benefits liberal democracies and ordinary people, we know that the American capacity to manufacture munitions suppresses our adversaries' interest in starting more wars and starting more chaos. And thinking about the ways that we can build up domestic manufacturing writ large, our independence, those are durably important. And so we've been having some meetings with bipartisan meetings to talk about how do we promote long-term geopolitical security, how do we advance the interest of our country and not dictators like Putin. I don't think that we're going to solve the urgent problems at home by handing the keys to continental Europe to Putin.
So you favor continued U.S. support of Ukraine?
I think it's in our national interest that Ukraine is able to defend themselves, yes.
Thank you. It's time for us to take a break. When we come back, we'll continue our conversation with Representative Gluesenkamp Perez, what she's working on, and one of our favorite subjects, the replacement of the I-5 bridge. That and more when we come back. Welcome back to Straight Talk. I'm Laurel Porter. We are talking with Democratic Representative Marie Gluesenkamp Perez, who was just reelected in her red-leaning district in Southwest Washington. Thanks again for being here.
Thank you. Thanks.
So as we were talking about, Republicans will continue to hold the majority. It'll be a narrow one in the House, but are there areas where you and your coalition think you could work with Republicans, some issues?
Oh, absolutely. I think most of the issues my community is interested in are not particularly partisan. Right to repair, a level playing field for small businesses, building more housing, the national debt. Like, there are absolutely things that we agree on. And last Congress, I'd passed the second most number of amendments of any freshman in my party. So really focusing on the amendment process, how we can make, can broaden the perspective of legislation to ensure that people in the trades and in rural communities are considered.
You mentioned the right to repair bill. What is that?
Yeah, so a lot of manufacturers are now putting in their terms of service contracts that you can't fix your own stuff. You have to take it to an authorized dealer. And we've seen in our shop, like some of these newer vehicles, it's like I used to do a light bulb in a headlight for $3. Now you have to do the whole assembly for $700. And so it's nickel and diming the middle class out of existence. It's removing us from our ethic of stewardship and pragmatic environmentalism. So I have 3 bills on right to repair, and would love to see that passed in the next Congress.
Do you think you can get it through?
I think it's a very, when it's polled, like there's broad support all across the country for this. And so building that coalition and the awareness and the advocacy for it has been one of the things I've been most excited about in Congress.
And you just secured a $100,000 grant for the Vancouver Farmers Market. You've said it will help farmers. How will it help farmers?
Yeah, I was talking to a guy that raises poultry in Lewis County. He told me that he used to be able to sell his chickens anywhere. Now there are 2 corporations he can sell his chickens to, and they control the price of propane and feed. And so when we look at rising costs in the grocery store, I think one of the big contributors to that is consolidation, farm consolidation, market consolidation, access. And so having a more distributed, more regionally resilient food system is critical, not just for ag and farmers, but for national health. And so supporting our farmers markets, having more ways for farmers to get their food to the consumer, to the market, is a critical thing for bringing down the prices at the grocery store.
And you got to love the Vancouver Farmers Market.
Yeah.
I love that. You often talk about SHOP in middle school or junior high school. Have you made any progress in trying to make that happen?
Yeah, so very exciting. been starting to work with our state superintendent on education, finding ways and removing the barriers. You know, it's expensive to run a shop class, the insurance costs, like the instructor time. So finding more federal resources to do that through Perkins grants to public schools. And then also thinking about the full spectrum. I have a bill I'm just recently introduced that would allow people to use their college savings plans, their 529 tax advantage plans, not just for tuition and tuition related costs, but for buying tool sets. Because that's the real burden of entry for a lot of people in the trades. The tool sets are quite expensive.
Well, let me talk about the I-5 bridge. We've often talked about this. Construction is expected to begin in just over a year. You wrote to the IBR program, the bridge replacement program, in late October, calling for an extension of the public comment period to give Southwest Washington residents, your constituents, more time to be able to voice their concerns on what's called the draft supplemental environmental impact statement and make their voices heard about that. You voiced your concerns about tolls, which would have a big impact on people that live in your area that commute to Oregon for work. That public comment period was not extended. It ended November 18th. What concerns do you still have, and what can you tell us about tolls?
Yeah, I continue to have serious concerns. I mean, I think about my life prior to being elected. I would have no idea that this impact statement comment period was happening, let alone have time in my life to make a public comment. And my concern has been that, you know, these heavily weighted public comments, things like aren't necessarily representative of the community writ large. It's representative of who has time and access to these systems. And so, you know, I have people in my community say, like, what are you going to do when I'm sitting in traffic on the new bridge, late for my kid's doctor appointment, and I'm passed by 4 people on light rail? Like, that's a real concern for a lot of people in rural America, and here, you know, regionally. So. I think it's really critical. I've learned through this process. I think there's a need for NEPA reform to ensure a more representative sample is considered, and it is still really important that people are reaching out to their local and state electeds who are making the decisions about bridge design and tolling plans, and having their voices heard clearly at this point. And so. That will continue to be my task, that our federal resources are spent wisely, that we are building things that last and that meet the current needs of our community, and not, you know, not spending a lot of resources on things that we didn't ask for.
Transportation planners are saying the tolls could be $1.55 to $4.70 per one-way trip. Is there any chance you're going to be able to get those tolls adjusted? I
hope so. I mean, tolls are a regressive tax, you know, and so my work will continue to be to ensure that we have the federal resources to limit or eliminate tolling, and part of that can be done, I think, through bridge design.
Representative, what with this next 4 years, what gives you hope?
Oh, I mean, I'm incredibly proud of our community. Like, being out and visiting so many of our towns in Southwest Washington, like, we are a proud, independent, self-reliant, community-oriented people. And we still have, we are rare. We still have a lot of medium and small family farms. And like, we are I think in many ways, like, we are the antidote to a lot of the problems we see nationally. And I'm just floored at the commitment to community and place and loyalty, and real compassion that I see every day from my constituents in Southwest Washington. That is what I look at. You know, I turn down the volume on DC, but, like, we have a good thing. We have something worth fighting for here. I
want to give you about 20 seconds for a final thought for our viewers.
Well, it's just an incredible gift to get to continue to do this work and to work on doing the urgent bipartisan work to move our country in the right direction. Casework, constituent services, and it's just an incredible gift, and I'm very grateful to keep doing the work.
Well, again, congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Representative Marie Gluesenkamp Perez, for joining us, and thank you for watching. Join me next week when my guest is outgoing Mayor of Portland, Ted Wheeler. And you can stream Straight Talk on your own schedule now. Download the free KGW Plus app, available now on Roku, Apple TV, and Fire TV. We'll see you next week for Straight Talk. Have a great week.